Hi everyone, so we're talking about cycle time. Cycle time is an important metric for a delivery manager. Let's have a look at why that is, okay? Now, I've joined teams where cycle time is insanely long. If your cycle time is longer than your sprint length, then you've got a problem. Why have you got a problem? Because it's going to take you longer to do a task in general than the time you have for a sprint. So you've already failed your sprint. You've guaranteed that you're not going to make your sprint. You're not going to be able to complete the tickets that you've brought into your sprint because they generally take longer than the length of the sprint. So first of all, if your cycle time is longer than your sprint time, then you really need to do something. But even if it isn't, there's other things that you can look at. Okay, so let's say your cycle time is long, and your work in progress is also really high. What does that mean? Well, obviously, if you've got a large number of cards in progress, it's going to take longer for you to complete a task because your team, which is consistent in size, is now working on a larger number of tasks. So they're spreading their resources themselves across more tasks. Okay, so what that means, obviously, it's going to take longer to complete each task, and so your cycle time then increases as a result of your team taking on more work than they can actually do. So that's one reason why your cycle time might be up. So if you're looking at your cycle time and you think, right, my cycle time is too long. Let's have a look at work in progress. Now, my work in progress has increased. Clearly, that is the issue. That's the main point that you should address. Well, let's say your cycle time is longer this month, but your work in progress hasn't increased. Okay, so it can't be that your team is taking on more work. It must be something else. One of the things it could be is that you have badly defined tickets, and badly defined tickets can cover a number of things. So firstly, you can have very large undefined tickets, okay, which means that as you progress through this ticket, you start to discover more and more things, and you start to add more things as a result to complete that ticket. And so then the cycle time increases because what you thought was, it's an undefined ticket, but presumably you thought you could finish it in that sprint. It's undefined. As a result, it started to increase in complexity as a natural result of the person investigating the ticket a bit more and realizing there was more work. And so by the end of it, that cycle time has now increased because that large undefined ticket has taken much longer to work through across the board than a ticket which would be better defined. Okay, so now you have a look at your board and you realize that actually it's not a large undefined ticket. It's a fairly well-defined ticket, but your cycle time has still increased. So what other possibilities could there be? Well, it could be that your ticket is waiting on dependencies. And again, that's on you as a delivery manager to foresee that and sort of remove those obstacles before they go into play. Does that ticket need to be done now? Or should you have a look at those dependencies and make sure they're resolved before you put that onto the board? Let the team work on something else, wait for those dependencies to be resolved, and then work on that ticket so it can go through the board. And you might be thinking, well, that sounds like you just want the ticket to go through the board for its own sake. Well, you want it to go through the board quickly, within the normal cycle time then, because that's what's consistent for the team. Lets you predict things, makes it predictable, but also it's satisfying for the team members to be working on tickets which move through the board, not just stuck in one place for a long time. Yeah, you want to have that consistent, you have that movement, and like I said, the key thing is for you to be able to estimate in the future tickets. If you have tickets which are slow and variable in terms of their cycle time, then you can no longer estimate and give people an estimate. You can't give stakeholders an estimate, you can't give anyone else an estimate of how long something's going to take. Okay, so let's say that you don't have any dependencies, okay, but your cycle time is still increased. What could the other possibilities be? Well, it could be that you've just got very slow handoffs between the different disciplines within your team. So the product designers sort of, let's say the start of user research has started it, and then they need to hand it off to product design, who need to hand it off to devs and so on. Maybe that handoff is slow. Maybe there isn't enough integration between your different disciplines from the very start to ensure that there's a consistent process between all your disciplines, and so you can have a look at the handoffs and the coordination between the different disciplines. All right, let's say then you have great coordination between disciplines. What else could be wrong? Well, the final thing that could be wrong is that people don't know when the ticket's done. There is no clear definition of done, and I've seen this before and have had it where people have their own version of definition of done. So one ticket might take ages because the person is going through a very strict list of things that they consider is the definition of done. Another person will just whip through that ticket through the board because for them the definition of done is much lower or much less. So what you need to do, and what I've done with teams like this, is have a session where we've done specifically a session on what is the definition of done, and how do we know a ticket is done, and everyone follows the same checklist of things to do. So there you have it. There's a number of reasons why your cycle time could be going beyond what it normally is. And I've gone through ways in which you can make sure that your cycle time remains consistent. And why do you want your cycle time to remain consistent? Because you've got to make sure that your work is consistent, your tickets move consistently across the board, so that you can then predict future work and you can predict how long something's going to take. And also, the lesser part of that is the general satisfaction for the people working in your team to get through tickets with a nice pace. It adds a sense of urgency. They work within a sprint. We know the team knows that they have to get on with this piece of work and finish it by the end of the sprint. They're not being a bit more lackluster about just taking on loads of work because they don't really have an understanding that the sprint is when all tickets are started and finished. They just sort of bring on tickets. It becomes a bit of a Kanban approach. Again, I've seen that happen many times. You just go from sprints to a sort of a sprint Kanban, and part of that is that lack of discipline in terms of cycle time. All right, I hope that video helped. And if your cycle time is too high or if it's variable, then have a think about some of my suggestions, put them in place, let me know if they worked out for you, and let me know if anything else you've tried has worked out for you as well. All right, thanks for listening. Press subscribe, press like, and I'll see you next time.